Welcome to the place where people of faith find real answers. We believe women deserve more than just religious band-aids for their most difficult and destructive relationships. And now for today's episode of Relationship Truth Unfiltered. Welcome. I'm Julie Sedenko, and today I have a guest who's been through it all. Alyson has bravely agreed to share her story, which includes 3 marriages, a traumatic brain injury, some sinful choices, and most recently, and most important, a lot of learning. She's currently a licensed counselor and owns a mental health clinic. Alyson, welcome.
Thank you.
You said that your first destructive relationship was with your mother. Describe some of the dynamics of that relationship growing up with your mother.
Yeah, I will. I want to start just by saying that I don't think I necessarily knew that. I would not have used the word destructive relationship with my mom until after I met Leslie. And so it's been a real eye opener to have been healing. Originally, why I went into learning from Leslie and from all of this was because of my marriage. And so for me to sort of parallelly learn that this had to do with my mom as well was pretty eye opening for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we don't often know that. Right? So as I go backwards and I look, it's like, wow, I can really see those patterns. Um, so all I can really do is kind of look at the facts of what the childhood was like. So my mom and my dad got pregnant with me before they were married, and so having Catholic grandparents and Lutheran grandparents, it was, what do? You get married, and that's
Yes.
what you do. It's that's the answer. And so they got married and had me and did their best. Right? They were young. My dad was fresh out of Vietnam. Um, my mom was 20, and the baby of her family. And the message that I got from her was, I tried. But at the age of 4, she couldn't do it anymore. And the story that I heard is that she left me when I was 4. And that's what I grew up telling. My mom left me when I was 4. And she went to California, and I lived with my dad, and this is early 1970s. So, having a single dad
Was
was
unusual.
unusual. And then we just did a lot of moving around. It's a really kind of long story, but if I could sum it up, I mean, I started flying on airplanes when I was 7 because my parents lived in different states, and so I would fly between the two of them. Um, and not because of visitation, not because of like that was the parenting plan that we talk about in today's day and age. It was my mom wanted to see me. And that maybe sounds good on the outside, and everybody looks at my mom as just being this incredible human being. She's funny, she's gregarious, she's eccentric, you know, she's amazing. But m- my life was really about appeasing her guilt, I think. That's how I would look at it now. And so she would be thinking I should see Allie. I need to see Allie. And so what that looked like was her buying an airplane ticket and coming to see me, or her buying an airplane ticket for me and sending me to her. And this happened about every 3 months for my whole life that I remember. One example I have is I was in first grade. I'm in Texas. We had just moved there, just me and my dad. And I got a tap on the shoulder from my teacher. So I'm in a new school, new kids, new everything. I get a tap on my shoulder. You have a visitor. And I get asked to come out into the hallway. And I look down the hallway, and there's a person who's, kind of bent down in a kind of a squat position with her arms out to me. And I didn't know who it was. And it was like, "Mom?" And I went running to her and, into her arms. And then my memory is she's just gone again. So I never knew when she was going to show up or when I would be told, "You're going to see your mom." And it was just I look at my nervous system now of the rise and the fall of the stress that had, because I could never settle into just being a little girl. I could never settle into just learning or just playing with my friends. That wasn't my life.
And that did carry in. How old were you when you first got married?
Let's see. So the man that I had my babies with, I met him when I was 19, and we were on again, off again for 4 years, got pregnant. He left me, didn't get married, um, even though that's what I wanted because I thought marriage was the answer. That's what I was raised with, even though it wasn't the answer. My mom left, but I got stuck into I think I got trapped into thinking that marriage became my God.
Did you eventually get married to him?
Yep, our son was 2 when we got married. Mhm.
Okay. And then how long did that marriage last?
Around 7 years.
Okay. And you had how many children with him?
2. Yep.
Two
Yeah,
kids.
yeah.
Okay. And can you recall some of the similarities in the dynamics that you had with your mother and the dynamics that you had with your first husband? And I guess what I'm saying is, did you have some of that I don't want to disappoint you, or some of that don't leave me type of feelings? Were there those things coming into play?
Sure, yeah, when I first started dating my first husband, within the first 3 months, I was going to college, and there was gonna be a formal at my college, and he was my boyfriend, so I said, "Will you come to this formal with me?" And he said yes, and I made arrangements to get a dress and bought the tickets, and then, like, the day before the event, he called and said, I can't come."
Hmm.
And that was the beginning of my nervous system, like, being familiar, that I know all about this. And I hated it, but I didn't know enough to end the relationship. It's like and so that was our story. I can't come. I won't be there. I mean, that was our life. We lived an hour apart from each other, so it was my therapist named it well about 5 years ago. She called it the arrival departure pattern. And it was very familiar to me, the arrival and the departure. And so going to see him, all this anticipation of driving to go see my boyfriend, who became the father of my children, the excitement of seeing him and then the saying goodbye, because I had to go back to college, or him coming to see me. That was our whole existence. And a lot of fights, a lot of fighting. And my mom and I would fight before we would say goodbye. We used to say that it made it easier for us to say goodbye. We'd get into big fights before we would leave each other.
So you came into this marriage pretty unhealthy and pretty broken.
Very.
It would be hard to have a healthy
Yeah.
relationship given some of your past.
Yeah. Very unhealthy. And I was raped 3 months before I met him. I was a mess.
You were raped
In a
by
high
by a stranger?
Yeah, at a high school party.
Oh, I didn't know that. Allie.
Yeah. And I have a
Okay.
sexual abuse history from when I was a little girl, when I was 8. So there's but that leads to the second relationship that we'll get into. There's connection between a sexual abuse history and what can happen next.
And just because of time, we'll
Mhm.
move
Yep.
forward into your second marriage. That first marriage ended, and then how soon after did you meet number 2?
Yep. So now that's what I was just getting ready to talk about. So it's good timing. Um, because of the sexual abuse history and the rapes, I ended up being raped twice. Is I had an affair, and so
You
I
had an
was
affair on the first husband
correct.
with number 2.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I was lonely. I was depressed. I was sexually uh, starving, I would say. Um, we lacked a lot of intimacy in our relationship with husband number one. And so husband number two started out as an affair. I was not a Christian. He was a Christian. And he told me all the things that I was missing, which is
Mhm.
you're beautiful, you're smart, you're funny, you have a lot to offer. Uh, and it felt encouraging and loving. And he started teaching me about the Bible.
Okay. I'm trying to
Forgiveness. Yeah.
I'm just trying to wrap my brain around that one.
Yeah.
I'm just not even gonna comment.
Yeah. I had
Um,
people telling me he was a wolf in sheep's clothing, but
yeah,
I didn't
that's
know what that
definitely
meant. I'm
no.
like, yeah. I was
Now we do,
Yeah,
right?
right? Oh, yeah.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is a wolf in sheep's clothing. If
Yes.
he's having an affair with a married woman and teaching you about the Bible,
Yeah.
that is a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So, but you fell for him,
Mhm.
and it's because things were so unhappy inside in your marriage, and you ended up leaving your husband. Is that correct?
I did. Yeah. I I moved out, I got an apartment, and I think the way that I can be so proud of myself now is I can look back now and say, "Wow, I'm like a warrior at heart. Like I can fight for myself. I've desperately wanted others to fight for me, and they never have." And so it's like, wow, as I look back on my life now and I think, "Man, I rose above these circumstances." I mean, I got a bachelor's degree, I got a master's degree. I mean, like I kept going despite all these parts of my story. So,
I
um,
love that,
right?
Allie, and I just want to stop and acknowledge that for a second because so many women, I mean, let's be honest, you were screwing up, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you were marrying men and having affairs and doing things that were all like, "Stop, no, don't."
right.
But you were a very broken person.
Yeah,
It's not like there's a manual and you didn't know what to do with these things. And so I love that you can look back on your life and instead of wallowing in the mistakes, that you're able to say, "You know what? I did a lot.
yeah,
I did a lot of really good things." And I just really love that perspective because I think that's how God would look at us too. He doesn't focus on our mistakes, especially after we come to him. So why should we?
yeah, yeah. And that's God has placed amazing women in my life who have spoke those truths over me. So I would not have been able to claim any of this prior, but I've had women speak that over me. Look at what you've done. Look at Allison, like you've overcome so much. And I all I saw was my failure. All I saw was my sin and the brokenness and all of that. I mean, I have one girlfriend who remembers me when she first met me. I call her my Jesus with skin on, and she would speak scripture to me, and I would curl up in a fetal position and say, "No, no, no, I can't take it anymore. You've got to stop." There was nowhere for that to land. And she just never gave up on me. And so now for me to sit here today and say, wow, I'm ready to claim the freedom that God has been um, speaking out over me.
And to the dear lady sitting here listening, I just want to speak that over you
Yeah,
that you may have made mistakes. You may have married the wrong person. You may be in a destructive marriage, but I want you to look back and see the strength that you've had, that you're still here, that you're still fighting, that you're still in it. And I want you to even hit pause for a moment and look back at the good things that you've done and the strength that you've shown and the tenacity that you have. And just take a moment for that. And then we can move forward and let's talk about the things that we've learned and learn and grow and heal. Friend, if any of this is resonating with you, please listen carefully. Leslie will be offering a totally free workshop on December 5th, where she will answer the all-important how question. Like, how exactly do you take control of your life when you're in what feels like a desperately unfair and impossible situation? If you need more than the usual pull yourself up by the bootstraps or just suffer for Jesus kind of advice, then please go to leslievernick.com/story and register for this free workshop. She's offering it at noon and again at 7:30 Eastern on Thursday, December 5th. This is about you taking control of your story, of realizing you can and showing you how. All you need to do is go to leslievernick.com/story, register, and then put it on your calendar and plan to show up. And now, let's get back to Alyson's story. So you are now in marriage number 2, Allie. Shockingly. Can you tell I'm being sarcastic? Um, he's not Mr. Wonderful and Mr. Christian, and things aren't so rosy on the other side. So describe, I guess, still some of the dynamics that you're carrying from one relationship to Mr. First marriage to now Mr. Second marriage.
I'm gonna make the parallel of, I think, what you just asked me to the connection to my mom again, because keep in mind, my mom has been an integral part of my world because she loved me needing her. So we had a probably a very close relationship. We were on the phone a lot. So she knew my misery in my first relationship. She knew that I was unhappy. She knew I was lonely. She knew that parenting was hard. It was all very hard. And so when I started to tell her about me having an affair, she was happy for me. She tells me now that she didn't like him. I've had a lot of people tell me he was arrogant, whatever. And when you're in love, or when you think you're in love, you don't see those things.
What were some of the destructive dynamics in this relationship?
Oh my gosh, horrible. I mean, he was still married. I was married. We would meet secretly.
He was married too.
Yeah. Christian, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday kind of guy. Knew the Bible inside and out. Theologian.
Okay. Did he know the part about being faithful?
Yeah, he actually believed that he was, and would talk. He used the story. I didn't know the story of David and Bathsheba, but he used that story in. To me, it felt like he was using it as like, look, this happens. People do this. People have affairs. I don't know. Later I learned that their first child died, and like, oh my God. And I had so much guilt. My guilt was crushing.
So you both end those separate marriages and then you come together, and tell me again, just maybe a couple just bullet points of what were the overarching patterns and destructive nature of this relationship.
So I guess I'll go back to the arrival departure um, dilemma in my own psyche. So my own subconscious was trapped in that again. So he continued to lie to me throughout the entire time we were together. He ended up having also being with his childhood high school sweetheart. So at one point, at the end, this is after 10 years, he was texting me, his ex-wife, and his high school sweetheart, all three of us, at around 6 in the morning. And whichever one of us responded to him first, he would basically spend the whole day texting with that woman. And and because I printed all the phone records, I mean, I was a hot mess, and so anxious and so sick. And there's got to be some listeners on here who can relate to when you know something's wrong and you're trying to find proof
Right.
because you feel crazy, absolutely crazy in your own mind when somebody's lying to you, and so you try to find the proof, and then even when you find the proof, the abuser will say, well, that's not true, or it's like, but look, I have the proof.
I think that the lesson really is when somebody shows you who they are, meaning he's willing to have an affair on his wife, believe them. That's who he is,
Oh,
and that's who he
absolutely.
continued to be.
Yes. Yes. So, but because I was so broken and so used to being manipulated and thinking that I could fix it, right? So again, back to this subconscious pattern is somehow I can fix this. Somehow I'm responsible. So little girl Allie thinks I can make my mommy want to stay with me. There must be something that I've done wrong that's making her keep leaving. What can I do to make her stay? I need to be a good girl. I need whatever. I need to be better somehow. And so I kept striving. Kept wanting to do well, hoping and thinking that that would make this person who's supposed to love me want to stay with me.
So, how did this marriage end?
So he got to a point where uh, So we were never legally married, and that's for another podcast. But we were spiritually married, and he would call me his wife, and all of that. Anyway, so at the end, he invited me to a Christmas party with people who he knew, who you'd think after 10 years that I would have met, but I hadn't. And we're in the parking lot. We drive up into the parking lot, and he says, um, I told all these people that we just got married this last weekend. This is 10 years in. And and I said, "What?" And he goes, "I told them that we just got married this last weekend. So we're going to have Christmas with these people. These are all like my people." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is so weird." So I walk inside and they all start referring to me as Mrs. his last name. And like they had a present for me. I was like, "What? Who are you people?" So when he invited me to become a liar with him, that somehow hit a value point in me. And so then it became very easy for me to end it. After
Really?
that night, there was something that it became so clear. So then I tried to end it, and then he got violent with me. So talking about, safety plans and, things I learned with Leslie, so important to realize that when you try to end destructive relationships, they can get violent. And it did. It got really bad. And,
What
but it
happened?
made it really easy. I was trying to leave my house when we were in a fight, and he grabbed my arm and pulled me back into the house and threw me against the stairs and broke a picture of mine. And yeah. But again, like, then it became so easy, and I had watched my mom had, destructive relationships with men, and if they got violent with her, she would end it right away, and so I grew up, that was like, you just end it.
So, and I just want to go back really quick. I
Yeah,
know we need to get to marriage number three, but
yeah,
so your marriage was not a legal marriage.
correct.
What do you, but you were with him for 10 years. When you say spiritual, do you mean because
Mhm.
of the sexual nature of it?
Sure, so that's what he used scripturally. He would call me his wife
Did you live
early on.
together?
Yeah, at different points, yes.
Okay.
I was trying to put together the picture. I wanted the picture. I wanted the family. I wanted I was so hungry for this picture, this ideal
Right.
family. I was so starving for a mom and a dad and the kids and the house and the fence and the like
What you didn't have.
what I didn't have. And I kept trying to create it.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So,
When I learned about being adopted into the family of God, that was so huge for me. It was
oh, I
huge
bet.
connection to my heart of that I've been adopted into a new family. It was life-changing, life-giving for me.
At what point in your life did this happen?
I think that happened during I call it my 10-year nightmare.
I can see
During
why.
Yeah, right? During that season because he was we went to church, we were in Bible studies together, and so I was learning scriptures right along the way, and so I was growing, on my own, and he would tell me to look at scriptures, and he's like, "Read it for yourself, you'll find out." One of the scriptures he used to use on me was, "There's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus," because when I felt guilty.
But there is conviction.
Well, right? And so later when I read that for myself, it was, "There's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus," but then there's a comma, and it says, "For those who live according to the Spirit." And it was, Oh, I get it, like, I haven't been living according to the Spirit has something different for me. So I had a lot of ahas and growth experience, and so I 'cause I never give up, right? Like, I just have never given up. I just kept seeking peace and growth and healing, and I just have never given up, and God has never given up on me. It's been a beautiful
Thank
story.
God.
Yeah, yeah.
So that marriage ends.
Yep, so I kicked him out, and, at one point, we had to get a marriage license in order to do one of the ceremonies that we wanted to do, and he lost it, and so we weren't able to do that because I did try having a legal ceremony with him. So he lost the license. Well, anyway, after I kicked him out, and he left and all his boxes were out of the garage, guess what was on the floor of my garage?
Mm.
The piece of paper, the legal license that he quote unquote lost. There it was, sitting on my garage floor.
So in some ways, did you have children with him?
No.
Thank God. So,
right?
um, but your 2 children were
Mhm.
growing up in this as well?
Yeah, but they had a I had a decent relationship with my first husband, their dad, and he had married a woman who cared about them, and so they would go between us. They would
Okay,
go, yeah, and we lived in the same town.
which is important. They're not on
Yeah.
planes, yeah.
Their growth and development mattered a lot to me. I
I bet.
invested a lot in making sure that they were gonna be okay and keeping them as separate from all of my drama and chaos as I could. That was important to me.
So, how did husband number 3 come into play?
Yeah, so husband number 3 was my neighbor. We had known each other, uh, and not well. I mean, just like we just lived in the same neighborhood. And, he knew that I was in a relationship with my 10-year nightmare, and I was out on my bicycle one day, and I got a text from him later saying, "Hey, I thought you guys moved." And I said, "Nope." I said, "The man I was with, he moved, but I'm still here." And husband number 3 saw that as an opening,
Sure.
and I was still too vulnerable. I was still too weak. I was about 8 months, 6 to 8 months. I had committed to my sister that I was gonna go at least a year and not date anyone. And, I was 6 to 8 months post husband number 2, and husband number 3 said, "Let's do something together sometime," and I said, I my reaction was, "No, no, I'm done with men, like, no, I need a break, I need a break." So he pursued me, and,
And that felt
um,
good in a way, didn't it?
it felt really good. And he had things that were better than husband number 2, and I learned this, I think maybe even on a podcast that you had done with another woman, is that when something is just even a little bit better than what you have, it's really good.
Right.
And so this is going to sound silly, but like he had a clean car. So husband number 3 had a clean car. Husband number 2 had a disgusting car, right? Like gross, like ugh. And so when I looked at what eventually became husband number 3, and his car was clean, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, and he had a job and he paid his bills, and it was like, oh, he's
So he seems like
amazing.
Mr. Wonderful yeah,
Yeah.
in comparison.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Oh, it was amazing.
But
Yeah.
you said now that you kinda can look back now and see from the beginning that there were red flags. What were they?
I have to look at it through the lens of what I've learned after reading Leslie's book. Um, so the phrase love bombing, I did not know what love bombing was. I can look back now and say, "Oh my gosh, I was love bombed." The gifts, I mean, I had jewelry and very early on, very expensive, beautiful gifts, and being told, "You're my soulmate and I love you and you're amazing." And at one point I tried to break it off. We had gotten into some type of an argument, and I tried to break it off, and he told me he loved me. And I think that tapped into, actually, I'm just realizing this just now. Part of my healing journey in these last 2 years, I recognized that the words "I love you" were manipulative and abusive. My mom, who was away from me and who had essentially rejected and abandoned me, would call me from another state and tell me, "I love you. I love you. Good night." Right? Like, part of me right now wants to say, "Where are you? Like, you're not here. How can you love me? You're not with me." But when you're little, like, "Oh, she loves me." But she was not the mom I needed her to be. She was absent and not helpful. And so the words "I love you" have been incredibly manipulative in my life. And so "I love you," like, that was hard for me to get out from underneath that. Like, I didn't even I now I can say, "Oh, no, that's manipulation." But at the time, it was, "I'm familiar with that. That feels good, and I don't know how to not be with you. I don't know how to guard my own heart. I don't know how to stand firm." And so I surrendered into that. "Oh, he loves me."
Well, that's interesting because you typically think of the words "I love you" as a wonderful expression of love, of genuine love, but it can be a manipulative thing if you're using it to try to get somebody to do what you want. Um, I thought it was funny. You talked about the love bombing and how it was in the beginning with all these fancy gifts, but at the end, the gifts weren't the gifts weren't so great. What was it that he gave you?
I got a mug with a picture of my dogs on it.
Which, I mean, that's nice, but it's not
It is.
exactly Gucci like you were getting at the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah,
So,
no. Oh my gosh.
but beyond the love bombing, there was the polar opposite that he would do, which was stonewalling you.
Yeah.
How did that come into play?
My nervous system had a familiar pattern of being rejected, abandoned, and given the silent treatment. My dad did that to me. And so when husband number 3 would, now what I know as stonewalling, when he would ignore me or not speak to me despite my frantic efforts to get him to speak to me, it was familiar. So my nervous system was familiar to that. And so kind of that fight, flight, freeze or fawn survival techniques of when you're in danger. And to me, danger is, when you're being rejected, abandoned, they won't talk to you. Um, I would attempt to connect in all my unhealthy ways.
So, give me an example when you say unhealthy ways. What specifically? So we might be able to recognize that.
As a sexual abuse survivor, I would say that my sexuality became a method for connection. I think sexual abuse survivors will tend to go one direction or the other after abuse is they'll become highly resistant, do not want to be touched and won't be. They use they will not allow themselves to engage intimately or sexually. And the other way is to become promiscuous and highly sexual. And that was me. And so giving my body away or being sexual was a coping mechanism, maybe a way of connecting. And I think, well, I know, I mean, obviously, husband number 3 loved that part of me. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. And and so he would even reject that. And it became another type of sexual abuse.
What caused him to stonewall? What would be his trigger?
Anything that he perceived as not going his way.
So if you said no to him,
Yeah, like if he wanted to purchase something and I said, "Oh, like we don't have the money for that." Um he would act like a toddler, like a teenager, or he would just not speak to me. If I attempted to share my opinion about something, or like let's say we had gotten into a fight. Let's say something we had uh I didn't like how he treated me. And so I would attempt to have a conversation about that. If he felt that I was slighting him or calling him out on something that he had done and he did not want to take responsibility for that or couldn't, I was the one to blame. And there was no wall past that. It's you are causing, and he wouldn't use these words, but his behavior would be, this conversation is over.
and when he would stonewall, what did that look like when he was angry?
What would be okay, so if we're doing well, it's hellos, it's goodbyes, it's good mornings, it's can I get you a cup of coffee? Stonewalling looks like nothing. It's empty, it's quiet, it's refusal to say hello. And even if I said hello, he wouldn't respond. Laying in his bed, I'd walk past the bedroom to get to the garage. And I'd come in and he just wouldn't look at me. Whereas on, like we're okay, he'd get out of bed and come and greet me. And if he was stonewalling, it was he would just lay there. To the point that I had to move into the lower level of our home because I couldn't walk past that door anymore. It was months. He went months at one point.
Really? So
Mhm.
this wasn't a day or two.
Not by the end, no.
And it would be something small that would lead to this type of length of stonewalling?
He wanted our old life to come back. So I go to work, I come home, and I'm supposed to be like I used to be. Well, I can't be who I used to be. And so I'm at the kitchen counter and I'm a wreck. I cannot function. And he is wanting me to be who I used to be, not in those words, but my experience was my emoting became I can't not emote anymore because the brain injury, I have a lot of impulsivity. I have a lot of like, I cry very easily. I get angry really easily. And so I had this like emotional reaction to, I can't do that. I am a wreck and I need your help. His reaction then is, oh, so I don't help you? Oh, so this is my fault? And then me going like, I don't know what's happening right now, but like this, and then he's done. Then he just is like, "Fine, then you're on your own." And then he didn't speak to me for 2 months. I came and went every day trying to navigate dealing with what I had to at my office, and he did not help me at all. I would be walking to and from with things in my arms. He would not help me. He did not inquire of me. He did not ask me anything. He saw that I had hurt him somehow. I don't know. But it was the loneliest, most horrible experience I have had, and that was during the season that I ended up finding Leslie.
You had a motorcycle accident with your husband.
Yeah.
What happened?
The day before the accident, I had seen my therapist who I'd been seeing for several years, and as I was walking out the door, she said, "This week, I want you to practice trusting yourself." I said, "Okay." The next day, I was, going to get my nails done with my mom and my daughter, and we had a birthday party that we husband number 3 and I were gonna be going to for a colleague of mine, and my husband did not wanna go. He had been upset about going for weeks prior to going, and at the pedicure, I got this pain in my side, and I didn't know what it was, but it was really aggravating, and I on my way home to get ready to go to this party, I said, "Lord, what is this pain? What is going on?" And I heard the Lord say, I've been waiting for you to ask. And I'm like, oh, okay, okay. What is it? He said, I want you to go to the party by yourself. I said, oh, okay. So I called my husband and I said, hey, I know you haven't wanted to go to this party. Like, it's okay. Because I wanted to practice trusting myself. And I said, I'm going to go to the party by myself. And his reaction was, you always do this. You always change the plan. It's always about you. Just get home. We're going to the party. I told you we would go. We're going. I felt stuck. I felt trapped. I didn't know what to do. I still wanted to trust myself. I get home. He had taken a shower and had on his Harley Davidson shirt, which meant we were taking the motorcycle, which was like my favorite thing in the world to do because I love taking a motorcycle in the middle of the afternoon. Like, oh, he's doing the thing that I love. The energy between us was so tense. And usually I always pray over the bike before we go. I pray over all our stuff. And I didn't pray. It's taken me a long time to not blame myself for this day, but I don't anymore. Um, and he was asking, how do we get to the party? And I pulled up I pulled up on my app which way to go. And he said, well, I think we should go this way. And I said, well, the app says this is the closest way. And of course it was, oh, so we have to do it your way.
Did he say that?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. So we get on the bike and we start going my way. Um, and 20 minutes later, a tire came off of a pickup truck coming towards us. The lug nuts came off first, and a lug nut went through the windshield of the car in front of us, and the tire was coming towards us. We were going about 60 to 65 miles an hour. And my husband did his best to maneuver a a a terrible thing. I mean, how do you do that? I mean, he's been riding bikes since he was 18. He did his absolute best, to miss that tire, and when we broke when when he put the brakes on and the back of the bike came out, that's when I saw the tire, and then I don't have memory after that. And then obviously our recovery story. So, the first time I saw him was 2 days later in the hospital. We both had been taken to a local trauma center, and when the orderly wheeled me into his hospital room, he reached his arm out to me, and his first words to me were, "I'm sorry." It's the first time he's ever said he was sorry in that way, and I thought he was sorry for the argument. And he wasn't. He said he was sorry that we got in an accident. He blamed himself for getting in the accident and does to this day. And I tried telling him my side of the story and he never heard it. He never was able to see the fight, and he told me that I'm lying and I'm making that up, and that didn't happen. We weren't fighting that day. That's his story. That's his narrative.
That's a really hard thing. Um, I know I've experienced that too, where they literally, truly remember something completely opposite of you. And it's like,
Like a different story.
yeah, and you're thinking, okay, am I crazy?
Yeah.
Or are they crazy? Or I know I'm not lying. Is he lying? And I don't know about you, Allie, but I've just had to give him permission to remember it the way he does.
Yes.
And I've
Yes.
had to give myself permission to say, I have my memory. I know my memory, and I'm okay with that.
And with accepting the fact that their memory is the way theirs is.
Yeah,
And that was part of my recovery, is that that's okay. I can have my memory. I can have my
you
story.
can,
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
There
Yeah.
were some other times though when as much as he did the right thing or tried to do the right thing in this accident, he also his anger caused him to be very reckless on that bike. There was one time in particular where he was angry at you or got jealous. You were at a bar, I believe, and he put you on the back of the bike, and because he was angry, what happened there?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, he drove over 100 miles an hour to get us home, or whatever. I just remember we were going really, really fast, and it was very frightening.
And I'm telling you, I've ridden on the back of a motorcycle.
Yeah.
That's some scary speed. I can't imagine. I've never gone 100 miles an hour on the back of a motorcycle, but, 70 is
Yeah,
like that's some scary stuff.
it is.
You suffered a traumatic brain injury in that accident. How did that really send your relationship spiraling?
I got to a point where I realized he is not going to help me. I have to help me. And I think as I reflect back on all of the relationships and can tie this back even to my mom, is I have to help me. And even though my little girl self couldn't help me when I was little, I'm an adult self now and I can help me. And I need to help me because I couldn't function and I couldn't get the help that I needed from the destructive people in my life. And so once I accepted through Leslie's teaching of I'm responsible for how I handle this, I began to take my own life into my own hands for my own health because I had to get better.
How did you find Leslie? This was an interesting
Yeah.
story.
So I couldn't read books anymore, and I listened to books on audio tape, and I think her book, Emotionally Destructive Marriage, was auto-suggested for me, and, my daughter was in treatment at the time, and I started listening to her book audibly, as I would drive to go visit my daughter, and I was just like mouth drop, like, "What? Th she's I know this. This is so cool." And I went all in. I was like, "I'm doing this." So I hired a coach and got into Conquer and just listened to all of her videos and everything. And it's just really given me the some foundation for something to stand on. I just haven't had much to stand on my whole life. And I feel like her work with the work that I've already done with the Lord, it was like it gave me some foundation, and I just am so thankful. I'm so thankful.
Talk about what that was like when you first started hearing things that you hadn't heard before and you're kind of opened up to this. What was that like?
It felt like relief. It felt like, I'll describe that once I started hanging out with women in Conquer and other people who read her books and the Facebook group and all of that, is like, this is my tribe. These are my people, like, because if you try to have a conversation with a woman who doesn't understand a destructive relationship, it's a totally different conversation to be with a woman who has also been in or who is in a destructive relationship. You have a different conversation. And I notice it the same with brain injury. If I describe some of my symptoms with my brain injury to someone who doesn't have a brain injury, the conversation is just different. When you hang out with people who get you and who've experienced it, it's a, it's empowering, it's liberating, it's so validating, and it's one of the reasons I reached out to you to say I wanna tell my story is part of it is for my own. I love being able to tell my story to somebody who gets me because it helps me on my healing journey. Thank you for letting me come on and just hear your validating statements and questions, like, you get me, you want my story matters, whereas
It
when
does
you
matter.
talk to somebody where they don't get it, it's like they disauthenticate your experience, and you feel alone again,
Mhm.
and in the people who are around Leslie, it's like, these are my people. I feel connected. I feel safe. I feel like I can be me and I can share my experience and be accepted.
Give me just some of the highlights in Conquer that you learned and applied to your life that made a real difference.
One of them was what's my problem with his problem? I thought that was great. I love that.
I hear that a lot. Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah,
people.
that was good.
Mhm.
And once I realized that I can't get better here, because I really I want to heal. It's been 4 years since the accident, and I have some serious problems visually and with my balance and cognitively, and it's been a real challenge. And I recognize I can't get better here, and I want to get better. I can't get better in this stress, in this environment. So I need to do what I need to do to get better. So just back to what's my problem with his problem is my problem is I can't get better. So once I took responsibility for that, then I was able to start making choices versus I'm a victim.
Is there any other ones that really stand out to you? Lessons.
So Leslie, I can just hear her voice. I just love it. It's like, you got information. And I just love that. It's like, when you do something and the other person responds the way they do,
Mhm.
that used to be bait. Like I'd get baited in to now I have to fix and solve. But now it's like, oh, how they're responding. I just got information. I mean, can you totally hear Leslie?
Oh.
I just got
Oh, girl.
information.
Can I hear Leslie? Yes.
And it's like, oh, like that's their experience. And I'm not responsible for it and I don't have to do anything about it. It's just information about who they are and how they think. And so, for example, when I made a choice to leave my home and go live at my mom's for 3 months, I saw a side of my husband that I think I knew was always there, but I didn't let us go there because I was terrified of it. He made horrible comments about my own mother, called her evil and said terrible things about her. But I would have never known that had I not moved to her house. So I got
You got
information. I
information
got information. I got information,
while
right?
doing the
And
Leslie
oh, right?
impersonation, right? You got
Oh, yes.
information.
Information. Yeah, yeah. And so that was really helpful. Now, when it was happening, that's not the way I looked at it. But when you're given an opportunity like you are allowing me to do this, it helps me to remember where I have how I have done some healing and how I have made progress. And I'm just so thankful.
What is one thing that you would want to say to the person who relates to you, who's in a situation that's similar to you? If you could just give her one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't give up. Keep pursuing peace. When you are seen and heard and understood, peace naturally washes over you. And we're not seen and heard and understood in our destructive relationships. We want to be, and we're seeking that, but we can't get it from people who are destructive. They don't know how. And so accept them for who they are, let them go, and keep pursuing peace. And that's going to look different for every one of you. You're going to stay well, you're going to leave well, you're going to do whatever it is you're going to do, but seek peace, and peace will come. Peace does come, but it's when you're seen and heard and understood. And it's possible. Just find the right people. They're out there.
Thank you. You've got an amazing story.
I hope my story helps others. So thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to this powerful story. Are you ready to take control of your story? If you are, please go to leslievernick.com/story and register for Leslie's free workshop on December 5th. She's offering it 2 different times at noon and 7:30 Eastern. Learn how to rewrite your story, even if life is a mess right now. We want you to know there is hope for your life. So go to leslievernick.com/story and take that first important step. Until next time, may God bless all of your relationships with Him, with yourself, and with others.